Okay, good afternoon. It is 4:01 on May 14th here, so we'll go ahead and call today's meeting to order here. My name is Alyssa Calderhead. I'm the PTAC co-chair. And prior to us beginning our second meeting here as this newly formed committee, I just wanted to take a moment and ground us in the importance of the work in front of us and to acknowledge the thoughtful and thorough work that has really brought us here today. So countless hours have gone into community feedback sessions, transit planning iterations, and refining this shared vision for mobility across the region. And so that foundation really reflects a deep commitment and mission towards inclusive, responsive, safe, and forward-thinking transit solutions. So it's now our responsibility and the responsibility of this committee to carry that momentum forward, reviewing programs, listening to the public, our experts that we have here, asking hard questions, and ultimately shaping clear, thoughtful recommendations to the Metropolitan Transit Commission. So let's keep that mission at the center of everything that we do today and the future meetings ahead of us. So with that, let's begin with introductions of all of the committee members. Please say your name and which city, town, or board appointed you. So
would you like to start from the right?
Yeah, we'll start with committee members first, and then we'll move to the virtual meetings, and then we'll wrap up with CATS. So I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How you doing? Good afternoon. I'm Anthony Hansard, and I'm representing the town of Cornelius.
John Cock, representing town of Davidson.
Marlon Stowe. Metropolitan Transit Commission. I'm sorry, I thought y'all was on set already.
Yeah.
Tanya Jameson, with City of Charlotte.
Yeah, thanks. Jonathan Wells, CMS Board of Education.
Juan Contreras, MTC.
Kevin Walsh, town of Huntersville.
Alyssa Calderhead, mayoral appointee.
Abdulia Odin, co-chair of PTAC and Mecklenburg County.
And online committee members.
Barry Green Jr., Mecklenburg County Commissioners.
Move staff. Brent Cagle, CEO, CATS.
Elizabeth Pursuti, Chief Administrative Officer for CATS.
Chad Howell, Chief Financial Officer for CATS.
Stuart Pratt, City Attorney's Office.
Emily Kunze, CATS.
Nigeria Johnson, CATS.
Brett Baldeck, Communications Manager at CATS.
Natalie Bouchard, CATS Communications. Kelly Goforth, Chief Development Officer for CATS.
Jason Lawrence, Chief Planning Officer with CATS.
Okay, thank you all. We have a quorum today. So I hope everyone had an opportunity to review the April 9th meeting summary. That should be in your packet. I'd like to see if there's a motion to approve the April 9th meeting summary.
Motion to approve the April 9th meeting summary.
Second.
Okay, we have the motion from Tanya, and then we have a second motion from Abdulio. Any discussion here?
I have a quick question. In our meeting last time during the public comment, Coletta Forrest presented and she had recommended a town hall. I don't know if anybody attended that. I did not have a chance to attend that. Did anybody?
Yeah, I attended it.
How did anything to bring back?
There's the concerns that she expressed when she came here about minority-owned businesses and just the impact. So it was basically they rehashed some of those concerns, and Brett and the team from CATS were available for questions as well. So,
thank you.
Mm-hmm. And there was another one the next day at there's been a bunch of these apparently, but the one the next day was really good because Brett had an opportunity to actually present and share about the transit mobility plan, et cetera. So that one was really good.
Right.
Okay, so going back to our second motion here, if we could just see raised hands for all in favor. And our virtual attendees, see you, Barry. Okay, any nays? Okay, looks like there's unanimous approval of the April 9th meeting summary. Are there any public commenters today?
No, Chair, there's no speakers today.
Okay. So we will move on to, because that concludes the public comment, we'll move on to MTC updates. So first item is recognition of rodeo competition winners at the CATS Vehicle Ops Center. It held its annual bus rodeo competition last month. Brent Cagle It was great to hear him share that CATS won 2 first place awards at the International Bus Rodeo, also held in Austin, Texas, earlier this month. So all participants, I think most of them were there, and they represented CATS on a local and national level this year. And it was really nice to see, wide recognition of their participation. All right. So moving on to the interim chief executive's officer's report. Again, Brent Cagle recognized and thanked Paul Gordon, bus operator, for going above and beyond his duties. Mr. Gordon assisted a visually impaired customer across a busy intersection at Beatties Ford Road and Slanter Road. I don't know if you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, we always like to recognize when employees go above and beyond. Our employees make a difference in people's lives, both in the true service they provide, but also in going above and beyond. Our operator realized that one of our passengers, a visually impaired passenger, was having a little bit of difficulty trying to get to their next location as they exited the bus. And the operator literally put the bus in park, got off the bus, and assisted the passenger as they were moving on to their next destination. And so we were really proud of that. And we wanted to recognize the operator for their service to the passengers.
Thanks, Brent. Okay. And as you all are likely aware, the PGA Championship is occurring this week, May 12th through the 18th. And during the MTC meeting, Ms. Elizabeth Presetti, Chief Administrative Officer, informed about the CATS partnership with the PGA. And with that, CATS has provided free shuttle service from Sharon Road West to Quail Hollow Golf Course for all attendees.
It's actually, the PGA is actually paying the fares for all of the participants. So and so they get to ride the Blue Line and any of the CAT services for the day that they have a PGA valid ticket. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
And then moving on, there was also a summary of monthly statistics. We reviewed both safety, ridership, as well as reports there. Brent, I don't know if there were any takeaways that you wanted to add.
Yeah, just briefly, amongst some of the highlights for the monthly statistics, there are really a couple. One, we continue to see missed trips below 1%. We did have a little bit of an increase where missed trips went over 1% in February, but that was predominantly due to icing events. Those missed trips have gone back down to below 1%. Beyond missed trips, we are also watching on-time performance. Our standard or our goal would be 85% or better. We are somewhere in the 78 to 82% range, so somewhere around 80% at this point. And so we are constantly working to bring that OTP metric up and into the 85% range. The last thing I'll say, and again, it's to talk about an incident, but also to applaud the quick action of the operators and everyone involved. Part of the safety report involved a report on a pedestrian in the south end who walked around a lowered gate, safety gate, saying, "Don't cross," because a train was coming through. That pedestrian went around the active safety barriers, walked into the track. The operator saw her doing that and was immediately applied the emergency brake, but was unable to stop before striking the passenger. The passenger did go underneath the vehicle, but I'm happy to report CFD, Charlotte Fire Department, and CAT staff were able to very quickly extract her from underneath the vehicle. She was transported to the hospital and is expected to be okay. Clearly very serious incident, but it was really the operator's quick actions on the emergency brake, as well as our safety team who does jointly train with Charlotte Fire Department, and their quick response to get her out from underneath that vehicle. It could have been much worse. So while this was certainly something concerning, their actions did greatly assist her that day.
Great news. Great to hear she's going to make a full recovery. Okay, so moving on to informational items that came out of the previous MTC meeting. There was a transit system plan update. Ms. Kelly Goforth, Chief Development Officer, will tonight provide us with the same presentation since it was deferred at our last April 9th meeting. And I believe lastly, under informational items, there was the discussion of potential alternate funding split in a 40, 45, 15 manner. So Mayor John Higdon of the town of Matthews, stated he was incredibly frustrated because every town in the county is getting what they want except for Matthews. He stated Matthews was the third largest town in Mecklenburg County with lots of amenities and events with potential to attract millions of visitors each year. So, really pushing that the town could really benefit from rail. He stated that the transit bill, I think y'all are aware of House Bill 948, the PAVE Act, which was introduced by Representative Tricia Cotham, removed some of the funding constraints potentially. So he advocated for a 40-45-15 financial model for a scenario to be run that could potentially show and help build out rail to Matthews. So Mayor Higdon made a motion to see if this scenario could be run. However, this motion failed. There was also a motion made and by Mayor John Higdon, town of Matthews, and seconded by Mayor Rusty Knox, town of Davidson, to see how much additional rail could be built from the Bowplex using that 40-45-15 scenario with an analysis from InfraStrategy's modeling software, and that motion too failed 6-1. Okay. So moving on to the action items. I believe up first we have July service changes. JL, Chief Planning Officer, is that you? All right.
All right, thank you. Oh, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, thank you. Great. So we presented this as an action item to the MTC meeting last month to detail the proposed changes we wanted to make to the 97, 98, 99, 290, and the 47X route. So I'll go in detail of some of those changes. The action was the staff recommendation to phase out those routes was approved by MTC. So today I'll be going through some of the details of those services, but also some of the outreach that we'll be doing and conducting, particularly with the Village Rider routes and the 290 and the CATS Micro advertisement we're doing as we continue to seek to transition individuals to those services. So a little background on how we decided microtransit. So this goes all the way back to May of 2022 with the Envision My Ride Bus Priority Study. That was an effort coming out of the Envision My Ride effort. And we put forward a series of high frequency bus routes, mobility hubs, but also microtransit was introduced in that map, and MTC adopted those recommendations. Part of those recommendations was at some point in the future to phase out the Village Rider services 97, 98, and 99. We did launch the CATS Micro service in February of 2025, and it has been operating in parallel to those services since then. And MTC, as I just stated, did approve the phase out of the Village Rider routes and Davidson shuttle routes to occur on July 7th, 2025. A little bit about the Village Rider services. If you're not aware of those routes, it currently operates every 60 minutes. It does provide a deviated service up to 3/4 mile of the route. The way that works, the individual, if they're within that 3/4 mile designation there by the line in black, they will call the day ahead, and the operator will go out and check and make sure the bus can make those turns. They'll contact the customer and tell them that they can be picked up, and then they'll do that deviation the next day. Very different from the CATS Micro service, where you pull up your app, you call the service, and our current wait time has been around 13 minutes. So we're seeing some really great success with wait time on the CATS Micro service. The Route 290 Davidson shuttle, it currently operates only on weekdays, 4 trips in the morning, 4 trips in the evening. It really functions as a connector to the River Run neighborhood up to the express routes and to the downtown area of Davidson. The other route we put forward to the MTC to eliminate was the Route 47X, the Greenhouse shuttle. It's a weekday peak only service with 2 AM trips and 1 PM trip. And it connects between CTC, it goes all the way to the JW Clay Station in the University area, and then goes to the Metrolina greenhouses in the Huntersville area. But ridership has steadily declined since 2020. We did see a lot of seasonal activity when the service started, but we have since the pandemic, we've just seen a steady decline. And to this point now, we're somewhere around 1 to 2 passengers per trip on that service. And I do have a graph that details that. You can see here on the map, the graph that inbound and outbound, that we did see some decent peaks in that seasonal activity in April of 2019, up close to 21 boardings average per trip. But when COVID happened, with most of our services, we did see a decline, but we did see recovery on many of our bus routes. We saw that come back on many of our services, but this continued to decline to where we are today. We're around 1 to 2 average boardings per trip. And so we did recommend that this service be eliminated due to low ridership, and MTC did approve that change. So as it relates to the Village Rider changes, we have around 120 bus stops in and around from Davidson all the way to North Lake Mall. The majority of those stops will be removed, mostly because CATS Micro is an on-demand service that does curb to curb. You don't need a bus stop to access that service. But we do recommend a number of stops to remain, like park and rides, like key hub locations where the CATS Micro service can connect to either our express routes or to like route number 7 at North Lake Mall, which we actually have a handful of people that do that go take number 7 from the east side of coming in and transfer to the 7, and then take the CATS Micro to go their job in the town of Cornelius. So we look forward to doing that. We just tagged all the bus stops today. So if you're in Cornelius or Davidson, you'll start to see those tags on all of our bus stops to indicate the discontinuation of that service, but also to advertise our CATS Micro service. The changes to Route 97 and 98 and 99 are considered a major service change. So that means for us we're required to do a Title VI analysis to understand the impacts, potential impacts to our minority and low income riders. We did do that outreach in August and September of last year. And we also did an additional engagement through public survey and did present that to the Transit Services Advisory Committee in September of 2024. Other changes that will occur in July, we are, if you go to CTC today, there are a number, the bays have signage that indicate which bus route goes to which bay. So people, we don't change it very often, but sometimes we do need to make adjustments to better help our efficiency within the center. So we're making some changes with some of the routes in the CTC. We're also, to Mr. Cagle's point about on-time performance, we have been doing a runtime analysis for the past year, and we're starting to see the fruits of that work. And we are making some reliability and schedule adjustments to some of our lower performing routes on-time performance. And you see the routes there with Route 4, 8, 11, 12, 14, 15, 17, 18, 23, 24, and 26. And as we go through this process, we hope to see those improvements to continue with those routes. And then with our next service change, we'll continue to make those enhancements to help with the on-time performance for the rest of our system. So going back to the Village Rider and the transition to the CATS microservice, we're going to be doing a lot of focused outreach with the community. Like I said, we just posted and tagged every single stop within that area. We're going to do what's called ride-alongs. We're basically going to ride the Village Rider, communicate about the service, do our travel training. We'll do pop-ups at high ridership stops. We'll do advertisements within the shelter and hanging riders alerts inside the buses. We also are looking to do a fare-free week in early June to help with that transition with the CATS microservice. We'll also do a digital advertising campaign in locations throughout the North Mecklenburg area and taxi and rideshare. So if you're on, say, an Uber or a taxi, there's that little screen that's inside the vehicle. So we'll have advertisements there. Also on some billboards and some entertainment and casual dining areas. If you're in Birkdale area, there's those monitors that are up and down the corridor. Will be advertising in those locations as well. So we're trying to do a multifaceted approach to do our outreach in paper, but also in digital. Yes, Tanya.
Hey, I saw the previous slide with the example of the bus lane on Central Avenue.
Yeah.
Are you all doing this outreach similar? Because I heard all the pushback. I'm off of Central Avenue, and so people were not happy and felt like they did not know that was coming. So what have you all changed from that?
Could have been, because I was there for that too. So that was just intended to show you, and this is what we presented to MTC. So we didn't have all our materials ready at the time, but this shows you an advertisement example of, this is the product, this is the change, what is it, when is it, who can use it. So we'll have similar types of advertisements and materials for the CATS microservice. So, and what we're hearing from CATS microservice has been widely accepted and very positive feedback from our current customers.
Got it.
So just to kind of briefly sum up our timeline, in April, MTC approved the staff service recommendations for the discontinuations of the Village Rider 47 and 290. We'll be doing our targeted route level engagement. We have posted our final notification of changes to the public to satisfy our Title VI requirements. Mid-June, Riders Alert changes sent to the public, and weekend prior to change, you'll start to see those signed changes occur. And then on July 7th, we'll implement that service change and continue to educate our community on the CATS microservice. Yes, ma'am.
Title VI is the federal requirement. You said basically the change is going to impact minority communities, et cetera. And considering what's going on with the federal government and their changes, how do you all anticipate moving forward with still making sure that these communities are notified when the federal government says that you no longer have to do Title VI or Title VI goes away? How will CATS then address to make sure that communities that are typically impacted will still be notified?
Well, our practice is to notify our customers about any kind of changes. So when I say we meet the requirements, that goes back to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. That is what Title VI is based on, and we'll be compliant with that as long as that is still continues to be the law. But as far as like how we communicate, talk to our customers, that is something that we always do, regardless if it's a major or minor change. So that practice will never change with how we communicate with the public. We take that very seriously.
So to add on to that, I mean, there have been, it seems like daily there's new changes coming out of Washington, but we've had no indication that the Title VI requirements or any of those kinds of existing requirements would change or how we do these kinds of analysis and notifications. The notifications is part of Title VI, but it's also just part of what we do. It's really that Title VI analysis to see if there is a disparate impact on marginalized communities that comes into play with that Title VI analysis. It's really looking at equity and disparate impact on the community. And that's also a very important part of the Title VI analysis beyond just the notifications.
So if the Title VI goes away, then will you all still do the analysis regardless of whether or not it's mandated by federal government?
Again, we absolutely could continue doing that, but again, it's hard to speculate on if it will. But like I said, we haven't had any indications that it would go away. But we certainly, having the law requires it, but it doesn't mean that without the law we couldn't do it. And I think that would be important because it is important for us to understand if our actions are having a disparate impact.
So you would?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
I do have go ahead.
Yeah, the slide that you showed about notification in the northern towns, I noticed you didn't talk at all about engaging the towns themselves. And I think it's probably fair to say, and Kevin probably can talk with a greater degree of wisdom than I on this, but I do know that a lot of the towns have social media, sunshine lists, websites. And I think that there's a tremendous opportunity to work through the towns themselves and getting the word out.
Yeah, and then Natalie can probably attest to this. We have a lot of great coordination and partnerships with our public information officers, with all the towns within Mecklenburg County, and we utilize their social media. There's some news is very local, so they have their own publications. So yeah, that coordination is current and ongoing.
Yeah, I do have just to piggyback on that. I know for the town of Cornelius, they really do a good job of pumping out the information on new services that are coming. I know I will latch on to a post and repost it as well to my platform so that people know what's coming and what's available. But just go back a little bit with, so we know that Route 97 is going to be discontinued, and it's been running at the same time with the micro rides. Do you have the data on how many people is riding the micro ride versus the 97 still?
Yeah, so each route, 97, 98, 99, generally ranges between 3 to 4 passengers per hour for the month of March. And so we're seeing, Village Rider has continued to either leveled off or decline for each route, whereas Microtransit has continued to increase each month since February. In fact, we celebrated our 5,000th rider maybe just last week, I think. And so we were averaging about, I think it was 63 or so a day in March. And this past month, we were 72, about 7 passengers per hour on CATS Micro in the month of March. So we're seeing, CATS Micro continue to increase. And as Village Rider goes away, I think we'll see that continue to increase.
Yeah, I definitely see it on the road, really the whole shift. But are you seeing in terms of ridership, is it increase in younger riders, or what is that mix?
So as far as the demographics of
Correct.
riders, yeah. So I can't speak at this. I will get some more detail for you on that. But I think as we have seen the increase, I think we about 25% of the rides are shared. So people are sharing the rides as well. We have a lot of new riders on CATS Micro. I think that this change will start to see people transition over, and that will certainly impact the demographics of the CATS Micro.
Jay, I want to pile on to that question if I could. Any anecdotal information on differences in sort of origins and destinations with the micro versus the Village Rider?
Yeah, they're pretty similar, right?
Similar,
I mean,
yeah.
like at North Lake Mall, the Brighton Town Center, the downtowns, the park and rides, because people are still doing some of that transferring.
Yeah.
Some of the medical institutions, the Target, shopping centers, people are going to grocery stores. So I think similar patterns that we are seeing with the Village Rider.
And can I add a question? Maybe this is for Jonathan and JL. It's open to students, I assume.
Yes.
So is CMS also going to be promoting it? We'd love to see fewer school, single occupancy school trips or, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a few schools within the zone. So that's actually our first ride was from a kindergarten teacher.
Oh, wow.
So
nice.
Yeah, anecdotally,
yeah.
and I live in the northern part of the county as well. So I hear a lot about it, see them every day. Anecdotally, we know that we see school teachers, folks going to work, coming home from work. First rider was a school teacher. Our 5,000th rider was a school teacher. It's just coincidence. But I can also tell you there are a lot of senior facilities and senior service providers up in the northern area. And there's definitely a strong contingent of seniors who say, hey, this is a great thing, and are aware of it and talking about it and writing it as well. So I think it's a good cross-section of a lot of folks, whether it's going to work, going to the store, going to school as well. And we do continue to see the numbers rising. Now, we do believe what we're not seeing quite yet is sort of the numbers on Village Rider dropping as much, right? So we do believe there's, people are a creature of habits. Right. And there's some amount of folks who say, well, look, I've always used the Village Rider. It works for me. I'm just going to keep using it. And so the public outreach, getting on board and do the ride-alongs, we know is very, very important because there are still a fair amount of folks who are using the Village Rider. We think just because they don't understand micro yet, and why change? I know how to use this service. And so that will be important as those folks transition over to microtransit.
And we have gotten some feedback is I'm going to continue to ride this until it's gone, and then I'll make the switch. So that has been a sentiment of several riders that we've talked to recently.
Yeah.
But certainly going from a 60-minute route to right now average pickup time of 13 minutes on demand, and not having to call ahead for that schedule if you're not within that 3/4 of a mile, we do see it's certainly a superior service. So we're looking forward to seeing that transition occur.
Can you all expand on why you all decided to pilot it up in that part of the county, and then the learnings that you are going to get from that? How will that impact where you all decide to bring it into the city?
So I think what was somewhat unique about that geography are a couple things. We have hubs. So we have a park and ride at North Lake Mall. We have a park and ride, 2 park and rides at Huntersville and a park and ride in Cornelius. So there's a place for those services to stage. They also, at 60-minute service, it's a service levels that is difficult for people to plan their day around. So microtransit could provide another option. It also was an area we already were doing deviated service. So that was somewhat familiar to that geography. But it also had a good mix of connection to a local route, North Lake Mall, because it does serve the northern part of Charlotte around Harris Boulevard area, and then also the connections to the express service. So I think it had a lot of good mix within an area, and the ridership in some ways was low enough from a pilot standpoint, so we could test it as we move into kind of more densely populated areas. I think that we can take those learnings and go, as we move down the county.
Yeah, I also think. So we have gotten that question quite a bit. One major driver, and we've said this before as we talk about the budget, without new revenues, we're very, very limited in what we can do above and beyond what we're doing today, right? I.e., that was the long way of saying we can do what we're doing today. We do not have funding to expand or enhance services. And so this presented a lot of opportunities for us to pilot something new. but also if it succeeded, right? We didn't know that it would succeed before we started the pilot. It gave us the opportunity to be able to replace at, in effect, no new cost, right? So microtransit and the Village Rider, it's a net zero change from a cost standpoint. And while we would be ecstatic about rolling out microtransit to all 19 zones, the majority of those zones are enhancing service, not replacing service. And that's really, that was the difficult decision that we had to make, because we do not have funding to really enhance service beyond where we are today. I will also say, when we think about the zone, the biggest complaint we get about microtransit in our first zone is that the zone isn't big enough. Right? I mean, that is the single biggest complaint, and we get that quite a bit. But if you go back to the zone, Mr. Lawrence, again, the zone was intentionally designed to replicate the service of the Village Riders, right? And so I know we say North Lake Mall up through the northern towns, but if you look at that, there's a significant portion of the northern towns that are not served in that zone. And that's because that zone was specifically designed to mirror that Village Rider service that ultimately goes away to pay for this. So it's a replacement service. So that's why we looked at it that way. I do think with additional funding, you know, the beauty of microtransit is, number one, microtransit should always be an enhancement to fixed route service, right? Fixed route service is definitely very, very efficient and effective in certain areas, but there are also areas where fixed route service is not as effective. And so as we think about rolling it out, it's always thinking about how do we be the most efficient and effective with all of the services. And up here, it presented a unique opportunity for us to try something new, but also without having to have new costs that we quite frankly could not afford in our existing budget.
Time for another microtransit question. You all have, are you all able to track through the app or through phone calls people who are requesting that are outside the zone, just to get a sense of
Yes.
level of demand?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can track more easily if it's in the app, because there was
Sure.
there
There's
was
a
a
point.
request made. If they call it, then we have the call taker has to note it, and that's maybe not quite as always as consistent. But
Are you seeing demand outside the zone?
Yeah, I mean, and one thing that we noticed, I mean, one tweak, and we're learning, right? Like,
Sure.
so creating buffers around the zone. So if you're near the zone, you can request, but then walk into the zone for your pickup, just like, you know, you walk to the stop, they'll tell you. So I think we're learning how to use this, learning how to but we do, yes, we're seeing some requests outside the zone and tracking that like we would any normal service change and making a list. So, yeah.
Okay, not to beat you up, I have one question. Will microtransit remain, or I know it's a learning tool, but will it remain a call demand type service to where they have to call the day before, or will it be same day?
Well, the Village Rider, just to clarify, the Village Rider service, if you were within that 3/4 mile buffer of the Village Rider route, that was a call ahead the day before. Microtransit, you use the app and you call it when you're ready to make the trip. There is no call ahead. And so you can't, you call it when you do.
When you're ready, and then on average, 13 minutes later, a car. So when you think about the app and how it looked, it's very, very similar to a ride share, like Uber or Lyft. You go in when you're ready to go, say, here's where I'm at, here's where I'm going. And literally a car pops up on your screen and says, your car will be there in 13 minutes, and you can see it coming to you. And then it gets you and takes you. And so it's on demand, same day when you ride.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I think that concludes the presentation here. So we'll move on to the transit system plan update. And Ms. Kelly, go forth. You've got the floor.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so I'll be covering 3 topics today on the transit system plan update, a summary of our public engagement efforts and the public input that we received, key findings and recommendations for the transit system plan, and next steps. So public engagement was a really important part of the transit system plan process. And the purpose was twofold. One was really to inform the public about the process that we were undertaking to update the transit system plan in terms of both the Better Bus plan as well as our rapid transit projects. And the second purpose was to gather public input as we sought to update the plan and develop that fiscally constrained program. And so tonight I'll give you a summary of our engagement efforts, and you also have at your seats a summary document of all of the public engagement efforts that we undertook with the transit system plan update. A lot more detail there. So round 1 of engagement was focused on providing information on the process as well as getting input on the goals and objectives of the plan. The transit system plan is focused on serving our customers with reliable and frequent service, advancing economic mobility by increasing access to opportunities, and fostering sustainability and innovation by expanding mobility options and supporting sustainable growth. Through our round 1 public input survey, we found that people agreed that transit options are needed. So 93% agreed that more transit options are needed. And they also agree with the proposed goals and objectives, including the importance of expanding our services and providing more reliable and frequent service. Round 2 of the engagement began in February of 2025. And this round focused on input on the 4 fiscally constrained scenarios that were approved by the MTC at the January meeting. We had a robust outreach effort to let the community know about the different scenarios and the process, and to solicit input on those scenarios. And we used a variety of tools to engage with the public, and in particular targeted some of our traditionally underrepresented populations as well. We utilized social media across all of the platforms, e-blast, text messaging, riders alerts on our CATS vehicles, newspaper and radio ads, and media coverage. And you can see from the statistics here that these efforts resulted in reaching a substantial number of people in our community. The primary information tool that we used was a project-specific website, and that had nearly 7,000 visitors over this period. We also had regular email outreach to 150 plus community organizations and 75 neighborhood groups, asking them to promote our transit system plan update process, the survey, and offering an opportunity to meet with staff and with their community members as part of their regular neighborhood meetings. And that outreach resulted in 26 meetings from February to April, and 35 meetings in total since October. We also held 8 pop-up events at the transit centers to get our riders an opportunity to provide input on the process as well. Again, there's a complete list of all of those groups that we engaged with in your package. And then we also hosted ourselves 6 public meetings. Those had over 125 attendees, and we had a virtual public meeting that was posted on YouTube and had over 480 views. So in addition to the meetings, the primary public input tool that we used was a survey. And this survey was not intended to be a scientific kind of public opinion poll, but really was intended as a tool for an opportunity for people that were interested in the process to provide input on the transit system plan. And it was promoted through all those different tools that I just mentioned, and was available electronically as well as hard copy. So we really tried our best to get that out to as many people as possible. On the survey, we asked 3 key questions. What are the most important benefits of the future rapid transit system? What are the most important benefits of the future Better Bus program? And an open-ended questions, tell us what you think about the alternative program scenarios. And we had really strong participation in this survey with over 1,500 survey participants and over 1,000 comments submitted. So on the first question, which was what are the most important benefits of the future rapid transit system, participants ranked more access to jobs, housing, education, and daily destinations the highest, followed by the ability to connect the system regionally more quickly and more high-capacity light rail service. On the question, what are the most important benefits of the future Better Bus system, our participants ranked more high-frequency bus service the highest, followed by more bus shelters and amenities and access to microtransit. The last question, the open-ended question, tell us what you think about the alternative program scenarios. We had over 1,000 comments left for this question. And of those comments, about half of the comments indicated a preference for one or more scenarios. Of those 531 comments that indicated a preference for scenario 1 had by far the most support, as you can see here, and with scenario 2 having some support as well. So to summarize the public input that we received, our engagement team reviewed all of the 1,000 plus comments and categorized them by common themes. And so for the next couple of slides, I'll just talk quickly about the top 10 themes in those comments that we saw. And the first one was the desire to, or the importance of connecting to the airport with light rail. The second one was comments that were generally positive and supportive of the transit system plan and the need for expanded services. The third was comments that emphasized the need for more frequent and reliable transit service. Number 4 was comments supporting the extension of light rail to East Charlotte and Matthews. And number 5 was comments emphasizing the long-term benefits of investing in rail. Number 6 was comments that emphasized the importance of increasing access to jobs, housing, services, and surrounding areas. Number 7 was the importance of safety and cleanliness on the existing transit system and making enhancements to that. Number 8 were comments that supported light rail extending to Pineville and Ballantyne. And number 9 were comments that had some level of concerns over bus rapid transit as a transportation option, citing potential low ridership, concerns over a lack of dedicated lanes, and potential inefficiencies compared to light rail. Number 10 were comments that supported transit-oriented development and improving the accessibility in our station areas through transit-oriented development. So finally, just as we think about how to utilize this public input, we had 3 key takeaways from the input process. The first one was that the community showed a clear preference for rail rather than bus rapid transit. The second takeaway was there was a lot of comments that emphasized the importance of enhancing our current transit system, improving the customer experience, increased frequency, and safety improvements. And finally, throughout all of the survey comments, as well as in our public meetings, we had a lot of comments with a recurring sense of urgency regarding the need to do it now, right? To the need for immediate expansion of our transit service and improvements to transit service. So at the MTC meeting last month, April, we provided our staff recommendation as a result of our analysis and input process. And the goal of this update process was to identify a financially constrained implementation plan for the transit program. And so the recommendation was for scenario 1, a phased implementation of the adopted transit system plan. And that recommendation is based on consistency with our adopted plan, project readiness, as well as public input. The next part of the recommendation is to prioritize the Better Bus program, including a commitment to the full program of frequency improvement, service expansion, and microtransit within the first 5 years. So really stressing the importance of rolling out that program quickly. And then expanding the Better Bus program based on future growth and ridership as the funding allows. Next is the phased implementation of our rapid transit corridors, including the Silver Line from the airport to Coliseum and Evans, the Gold Line extension from Rosa Parks Place to Eastland, the Blue Line extension from I-45 South Boulevard to Carolina Place Mall in Pineville, and then future extensions of light rail for the Silver Line and the Blue Line as funding allows. And finally, the recommendation was to study and evaluate options to extend light rail further on the Silver Line East, including looking at other funding opportunities. So with that, I think we're going to move to a little more detail on the Better Bus program, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Lawrence for that.
Thank you, Kelly. So we've talked a lot about, a couple out in the public, talking about Better Bus, talking about the importance of bus. And, Kelly just mentioned, the implementation of the Better Bus program would happen within the first 5 years with new funding. But I think what we like to talk about too, and we shared this with the MTC, is like, what does this really mean? To go from 50% increase in service in the first 5 years, just a little bit of context, nearly 60% of all of our ridership each day comes from the bus side of the house. And of that 60% of that ridership comes from just 15 routes. I mean, you can go down like one route, number 9 carries 10% of our entire bus system. So when you start thinking about where to put the investment, where to prioritize, if you take for those 15 routes, improve those to 15-minute frequency, we're impacting 60% of our bus ridership. And then as we think about system-wide, taking many of our 60-minute routes and 40-minute routes to, no worse than 30 minutes across the system, and fully implement our CATS micro program throughout the county, working with our local transportation DOT partners to implement a signal priority so our buses get more green time and improve that on-time performance, and we would primarily start that with some priority corridors along Central Avenue, Bays Ford Road, Monroe Road, and Freedom Drive in South Tryon. And we would expand our paratransit service. As we expand our bus network, we would also expand the paratransit service. But what does it mean, like from a frequency standpoint? What does that really mean for individuals? If you're a bus rider, if you put yourself in the skin of a bus rider who's using each and every day, I'm fortunate enough to live off of Central Avenue. I can see Central Avenue. It's a 5-minute walk. I see the bus go by. I know I get there. It's a 10-minute wait. It's a whole different scenario if that's a 30-minute wait or a 60-minute wait. And so imagine if you're doing that throughout each and every day, you're getting to a job, because a lot of people don't live where they work, and they have to go across the county to get to jobs, from East Side all the way to Westinghouse, from East Side to the airport, and vice versa. those connections and timing really means a lot of freedom to our individuals. And so big piece of this also improvements in frequency is not only focusing on the peak, because not everybody's coming to an office job uptown. A lot of people are doing shift work. People are working through, need that frequency throughout the day. So this 15-minute frequency would be throughout the day. So think about, from 7 to 7 roughly, that they would have that consistent frequency. And that really is game changing for our transit customers. So we've talked a lot about, and we'll share a lot of numbers in detail here, but I want you to leave that the frequency is one of the biggest components of this, and that is one of the things that we'll lead with the Better Bus Initiative. But we've also heard that, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can't tell you how many times I've been out to a public meeting, somebody asked about bus stops and ask about shelters and waiting pads and just the basic items. And so through this effort, we would improve 2,000 stops with shelters, benches, and waiting pads, and we would do that within the first 10 years of this new funding, expanding our fleet, and also taking care of our operators and looking for support facilities to support their operations each and every day. So think, comfort stations where they can take a break or use a bathroom. It would also include renovations to our CTC and expand our the Charlotte Gateway Station facility into the future. And as stated before, we would do that in the first 10 years.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
With the frequency, is the challenge that we can't increase frequency now an issue that we don't have the funds to buy buses, or we don't have the funds to pay more drivers, or both?
Yes, we are unable to expand our frequency through our current funding constraints.
And then my second question, so you mentioned we're both off of Central Avenue. So the 9, so it's increasing frequency. So it's 15-minute intervals, but it's still going to take me to Uptown.
Correct.
But it's just going to depend on whether or not the other bus I have to get is, if I've got to go not just to Uptown area, if that's also one of the most used routes, whether or not that's going to be on the same frequency, or it might still be stuck.
Well, the good
waiting.
thing about right now, we have routes that are, some are at 15, some are at 20, most are at 30 or beyond 30. So having them around the same frequency helps us do it from a scheduling standpoint, helps with that. And we do see kind of natural pairings. There's a lot of natural pairing between the 9 and the 7, that's the Betty's Ford Road route. If they're both at 15-minute frequency, through our scheduling, we can make sure that those connections happen. But the great thing is it's only 15 minutes. So just like, if if you miss that transfer, you're typically not waiting as long as you're doing today. Another big piece of it too, the impact of the microtransit, the example we gave to the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition, if you're on West Boulevard and you're trying to get to the Walmart, today it's challenging. You either have to take a 50-minute route, the Jackson Park route, to go from west to the Walmart on Wilkinson, or you're going downtown to go cross town. So with the microtransit, with that limited waiting time, you can just go directly to your destination. So I think, the access to food and groceries and medical will greatly increase as we think about this from a real neighborhood scale.
One example, so a couple things. I've said it, I'm going to try a new analogy, but I've said in the past that bus is always the backbone of every transit system. I'm going to try it a different way. Bus is the foundation, right? You have to have a quality bus system as you think about then expanding and thinking about rapid transit corridors. And frequency is one of those key building blocks in that foundation. This was anecdotal, but I think powerful. One of our early riders of microtransit, he's a gentleman who works in Cornelius, but he lives on Central Avenue. And so that's a long ride. That's a 2 transfer ride. So he starts his day getting on the 9, which is 15-minute or better frequency, transfers to the 7, which is 20 to 25-minute frequency, goes to North Lake Mall and would hop on that Village Rider, which is 1 hour frequency. So just changing microtransit saves him, 45 minutes per direction of travel, because he no longer has to wait on the Village Rider 13 minutes, and he's booking that in advance. He's booking it as he's getting there. 13 minutes later, he's on his way to Cornelius. And so lining up all of those saves a lot and a little all at once, right? So that it lines up those connections. The other thing I'll say is it's a huge improvement for sense of safety and security, because passengers don't feel safe when they're sitting at a bus stop by themselves waiting on the bus, right? And they're alone. And imagine having to do that for 45 minutes because the next bus you're waiting for is an hour frequency. So it really creates what's it called, a virtuous cycle, where things just, as those things come together and that frequency enhancements come together and consistency across the system, it helps in many, many ways. But from a CAT standpoint, the better bus as part of this program is key. It is really kind of those non-negotiable to us. We would never recommend, we will never recommend reducing better bus for rapid transit or for rail. And that was sort of the question that came up in the last MTC, and the other members of the MTC agreed with that.
So a couple things that we heard during the public outreach, she was like, well, how will you use this feedback? You know, is this set in stone? So one thing that we have continued, we're making adjustments to the plan as we move forward to finalize that. In fact, we added some microtransit zones to Northwest Charlotte around the Bellhaven Boulevard area, but also extended a microtransit zone from the Canton North End area over to Beatties Ford Road to help with that kind of crosstown nature that individuals need to travel. One thing that we often have heard too, how does CATS Micro integrate with local bus service? So today it's a free transfer from the 9 to the 7. It's the same fare. That's how the microtransit service works. So as you take microtransit, you can seamlessly transfer directly to our local services. And how quickly will these service improvements occur? That's something we've heard, very often. So with new funding, these enhancements would start in July of 2026. So we will be working through our prioritization to begin with the routes, likely with our more higher ridership routes, but also with the CATS microtransit zones. And we'll move faster if we can. So that service, all those improvements will start to occur in July of 2026, but would be fully complete within the first 5 years of the new funding. Wanted to share just a bit more detail from a geographic standpoint where some of these improvements would occur. For like the North Charlotte area, we would improve 5 routes to 15-minute or better frequency. The North Avenue with South Street area, Beatties Ford Road, North Tryon, Statesville, and Graham Street. And one thing I also like to mention, we'll improve our express service as well, add more frequency in the midday, but also improve our peak service on our express routes. And then we would currently have that CATS microzone serving the North Lake area in North Charlotte. And for the northern towns, we would improve the express services that currently serve those areas. And we would continue with the microzone that's currently in operation. And of course, a major expansion of our bus stop amenities. For East Mecklenburg and East Charlotte, we would focus on Central Avenue, Monroe Road from a priority standpoint, work with our local DOTs to do signal priority to get more green time for our routes to improve our travel time. But we also would improve 5 routes to 15-minute or better frequency on the Plaza, Central, Commonwealth, Shamrock Drive, and Monroe Road, and improve our express services to Mint Hill and Matthews, and also to Charlotte in the Idlewild Road area, and CATS microzones serving the Far East area off of Harrisburg Road, but also Albemarle Road, Independence Boulevard, and Lawyers Road. And then for the towns of Matthews and Mint Hill and the rest of our East Mecklenburg area, we would continue the Route 27 improvements down Monroe Road and John Street. We would improve the route that travels along from Commonwealth Avenue to Independence out to Matthews to 15-minute frequency, and improve our Matthews Express service, Route 64X. And then have a microtransit zone serving downtown Matthews and the Levine campus. And same thing for Mint Hill, improving their express service as well as a microtransit. Okay. Mic drop. So for South Charlotte, we would focus on our high frequency corridors for South Tryon and Park Road, but we'd also improve our express services for Still Creek, Providence Road, Ray Road. And we would be utilizing the I-45 express lanes when they come in operation to do an express connection from the Blue Line directly to the community of Ballantyne, and then microtransit zones in Ballantyne, Star Mountain, Quail Hollow, and the Still Creek area. And then for Pineville, we'll continue that Park Road service at 15-minute frequency, and then essentially serve the majority of the town of Pineville with a microtransit zone. And lastly, for West Charlotte, the western part of the county, we would have a priority bus corridor for Betty's Ford Road and Freedom Drive and South Tryon. And we'd have 6 routes improved to 15-minute frequency along Wilkinson, Beatties, Tuckasegee, West, South Tryon, and Freedom Drive, and improve our Mountain Island Lake along Brookshire Freeway express service, and microtransit zones serving as those northwest areas that I mentioned before, but as well as West Boulevard, Wilkinson, and the Charlotte Premium Outlets, Bearwood area. So if you think about just in pure numbers, the numbers are very large in the improvements that we would see today. We have 1 route at 15-minute frequency that serves just about 29,000 individuals within a quarter mile. Within a 10-minute walk, say a half mile, that number goes up to 450,000 people across the county, across those 15 routes. 72% of Mecklenburg County would have access to at least 30-minute service within a quarter mile. And microtransit just by itself increases our service area by over 100 square miles. And as we further into the individuals that we would serve, today we serve just with that 1 route, 19,000 individuals of low income. That would increase to almost 100,000. And then for persons of color today, that's at 40,000. That would increase to 202,000 individuals of color across our 15-minute expanded network. And from a job standpoint, 320,000 more jobs will be accessible within a 10-minute walk of those 15-minute frequent networks. And with that, unless there's any further questions, I'll hand it over to Ms. Goforth to talk about scenarios.
So thank you so much for that, Nichelle Dunlap Thompson. I was wondering with these numbers, the improvements as far as the job access, have you all partnered with any local companies on those routes for these improvement percentages, just to ensure that these goals, these numbers are actually going to be obtained?
So what that number indicates is individuals that would be accessible.
Right.
And the jobs that would be accessible to that, but certainly through our business partnership initiatives that we would seek to, we have an all access program so that we can increase access to the services. But yeah, I certainly think that as we move forward, there will be partnerships, because today we don't have those routes in place, and those routes only come in place with new funding.
Absolutely. I understand it. Thank you so much for that. I just want to ensure that these numbers are actually what we're seeing results from, because that's huge. This is awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Oh,
yes, sir.
It looks like that provides something for everybody, but I do see that there's a little bit of a geographic gap. If I'm looking at the service area map, it appears that there may be some neighborhoods that aren't necessarily touched by transit routes.
Mr.
And some of those are right
Wells,
within the,
what slide are you on?
well, the best one probably is slide 19. Yeah, so what is the message to folks that live in those neighborhoods? Is it microtransit? Is microtransit the answer to the question, how do I access public transit?
So if I understand your question correctly, some of the areas that are maybe outside of the microtransit zones that you see on the map there.
Right, and where there are gaps in terms of the locations of the existing alignments.
Yeah, I mean,
proposed alignments.
Sure, I think just with any service plan, I mean, we started with the network we have today and improving the riders that we have today, and that's where that kind of 15 network came from. The microtransit zones were added where we saw that there was need and also gaps to fill. But as we go through the process, if there's other opportunities, as the population continues to grow, we will continue to do outreach with the community to determine those needs. And we're making changes now. We added a zone in Northwest area through community feedback. We added microtransit to Betty's Ford Road. I think as we, like the River District is an example of an area we don't serve today, but we will extend the Route 10 to go out to that area as they continue to develop. And, but we're, certainly what you see today is starting with how do we serve best the people that we're serving today with that 15-minute network and looking for opportunities to expand.
Because I see some neighborhoods, and particularly in the south part of Charlotte and out on the east side, out towards Rocky River that way, that there's just not much available to them. And I would suspect that there isn't anything within a reasonable walking distance.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of this, as we partner with the city and all the towns as they improve the infrastructure for sidewalks and road connectivity, that will help us be able to expand service, because we do need that accessible walk and accessible locations for service to occur. So that, I think that'll be the ongoing partnership that we'll have.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that with Better Bus, it's unlimited in certain aspects of this, because what we know now could, greatly change in the next 10 years with all of the improvements being made by July 30th or 2031. Is that right? 5 years. So, that's where that public-private partnership really steps up, and you begin to look at these connectors, et cetera, for the bus stops. And I think we can really have an opportunity to get creative and fill those spaces.
One more question.
So I'm going to go for 2 questions.
Yes. All right.
Let the record state.
Okay.
To Mr. Wells' question, is it safe to say that the proposed network sort of reflects the areas with the highest transit propensity? So
yeah, we also, we have MTC policies that direct us from a travel market standpoint, and our number one priority is our existing system, right? And the next are individuals without cars, and then those that need access for jobs and other opportunities. So, but that is piece of it, but we're changing and growing and we'll adapt to that.
Yeah, I think the basic answer is some of those places where you see quote unquote gaps, there can be other things going on in those areas that mean that those are basically areas with very, very low density. Sometimes that's because there's a rock quarry in that area where no one lives, right? And very few people work. Not that no one works there. There are people who do work there, but those are generally areas of very low density. And I think the reality is, as we continue to expand, we can make different decisions as where people live changes. And we know that with transit, but we also know there will be some areas in the county that just are very, very difficult, if not impossible, to serve with transit. And so we are trying to make sure that we're serving the most people we can in the best way with the best service that we can and connecting them.
My second question, Kelly, for the public input, do you think there might be a correlation between the ambivalence about BRT and the pro East Charlotte LRT? I mean, is it that was the kind of the most negative piece of the takeaways, and I wonder if those folks were kind of voting that same way, because clearly being against BRT is not consistent with all the people who said we want more transit, better, faster,
Yeah, I don't think we saw, that it was just coming from, the east or the southeast side of we heard that at a number of meetings and throughout the process. But I think one of the main things that we heard was need for more bus services. It's just really focused on that reliability piece of it, and whether bus rapid transit is the best solution for that. All right. So we're going to just conclude with quickly reviewing the recommendations related to the rapid transit corridors, which includes the red line, silver line, gold line, and the blue line. So the red line is the proposed 25-mile commuter rail service with 10 stations. The locally preferred alternative is from Charlotte Gateway Station in Center City, Charlotte, up to Mount Morn in Mooresville. And the silver line is a proposed 29-mile light rail line with 30 stations. The locally preferred alternative is from Belmont in the west to Indian Trail in the southeast corridor. The recommendation for the minimum operable segment to be included in the fiscally constrained transit program is from the airport to Coliseum Evans stations, a station in the southeast. The gold line is a proposed streetcar extension 2 miles to the west to Rosa Parks Community Transit Center and 4 miles to the east to the Eastland Community Transit Center. And the blue line extension is a 5-mile extension of light rail from the I-45 South Boulevard, the current terminus of the blue line, to Community House Road in Ballantyne. That's the locally preferred alternative. And the recommendation for the minimum operable segment to be included in the fiscally constrained plan is from I-45 South Boulevard to Carolina Place Mall. Also on the blue line, improvements that would extend all of the remaining 2-car platforms on the existing blue line would be extended to 3-car platforms as part of the fiscally constrained program. So the transit system plan update also included the development of a financial model and a detailed financial analysis to identify a program that's realistic, constrained, and implementable. The financial plan represents a snapshot in time, and it's going to change and evolve as the program advances. Particularly as projects advance into more detailed design, the costs and the schedules will solidify. This financial analysis included cost estimates and revenue projections that are based on reasonable and conservative assumptions. And the results of that analysis indicate that the projected costs and revenues are balanced and can support the successful implementation of the proposed transit program. So we've noted that we're recommending a phased implementation strategy, and this slide just outlines the implementation plan in short, mid, and long-term stages. The immediate focus, as we've mentioned, would be on implementing the Better Best improvements in order to meet the urgent need for expanded transit services all across the county. We'd also begin the Red Line commuter rail service as the first priority and advance the Silver Line. In the midterm, service would begin on the Silver Line, the Gold Line extension, and the Blue Line extension. And importantly, we have also accounted for funds to maintain a state of good repair on the system-wide. And in the long term, both the Better Bus program as well as the Silver Line and Blue Line would be extended further as our financial capacity allows. So the next step for the transit system plan is at the May MTC meeting. The MTC will consider an action item to adopt the transit system plan with this financially constrained program. That concludes the presentations. Glad to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. The first one regards the Gold Line. Did you get much feedback regarding the Gold Line? You know, any sort of positive or negative feedback about the Gold Line? Because the Gold Line to me seems to just kind of creep along in parallel to all this other stuff that's going along or going on with no real mention of, you know, improvements that need to be made to it, first off. And with really, it almost seems like a zombie in the transit plan. And I know it's taken up a considerable amount of resources. So I'm wondering, are you still seeing are you still seeing positive feedback? Are people still wanting this? Because to me, it looks like it's going to, the Gold Line and the Silver Line will cannibalize each other in terms of their ridership, being that they're, for much of the Gold Line's route, they're only about a half mile apart from each other. And so I'm just wondering, like, is this something that's just kind of continues to go along under the radar, or are people are people excited about the Gold Line in the same way they are the Silver Line?
Thank you for that question. I think generally we heard some positive feedback about the Gold Line, but not a whole lot of discussion about the Gold Line. And I think that's because in all 4 scenarios, the Gold Line was included. So there wasn't, alternatives being considered for the Gold Line, whereas the Silver Line, we were talking about a minimum operable segment, or we were talking about bus rapid transit. But what we have seen, we've been doing public engagement on the Gold Line extension design update process over the past couple of years. And through that process, there has been a lot of engagement, a lot of positive feedback and excitement about the Gold Line extension project. And but some of the comments on that have been, the need to improve reliability of streetcar service in general, both on the existing and if we extend it as well. And so we have that design update study underway to look at opportunities to do that. We'll have some recommendations hopefully later this year regarding the Gold Line existing as well as the extension.
Okay, follow-on question about the Gold Line. Are any of those enhancements, I know it's kind of the trains left the station, so to speak, on the current segment, but on future segments, are any of those enhancements revolving around the idea of dedicated lanes for it?
We are, so a couple of different things we're looking at. One is stop locations, particularly on the east side, looking at the number of stops along that alignment. So reducing the number of stops to increase the travel time, but also looking at different cross sections or where the streetcar travels in the lane to try to improve that rather than being on the side, moving to the median as the lane configuration allows. So we are looking at changes in lane configuration that would help that, as well as on the extensions in particular, signal priority that could help the streetcar move faster. And then in the short term with the existing system that will also benefit the future, we're evaluating kind of the other runtime improvements that can be made for the streetcar, including potential, push button options to skip stops if there's nobody boarding or alighting from the streetcar, and other ways that we may be able to increase the frequency of the streetcar as well as improve that runtime.
Okay, and then last question, is there a possibility on the Silver Line, is there a possibility that under the first scenario, you might be able to extend the Silver Line, I don't know, a mile east or something to basically where Albemarle Road and 74 meet up, because that's a huge traffic bottleneck, and I'm sure many people would love an option that doesn't include driving through that every day.
Yeah, and so that is one of the recommendations, is to study that further, study options to extend the Silver Line further as far as we can within the financial constraints, and looking at opportunities to reduce the costs, or to look at other funding options to see if we can get that terminus a little bit further. Yes.
Okay, with that in mind and 5 minutes remaining here, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting here.
We can hold it to next month if you like.
Yeah. It's actually under the upcoming agenda topics, the sales tax legislation. So we'll hold that item for our next meeting. Okay. And I believe that Natalie wants to take a group photo of everyone.
Need a motion?
Oh, let's make a motion first to adjourn here. So
Motion.
motion. All right.